I don't always do this, but I just thought, you've got your homework packet. The kind of the first major thing that you guys are turning in is due tonight. Some of you might have already turned it in. I know some people in the class have, and then you have this first exam coming Thursday, so in 2 days. So, and also, you've only seen recordings of me. We've only interacted asynchronously, so I thought it would be nice to kind of, this is optional because people, some people are probably working right now or unavailable or getting blown away. We're in yet again another storm. I don't know if it's raining exactly where you guys are. It's very and windy here. It's very, very windy. I'm getting all these wind advisories on my phone. It's like, what? It said like 40, might be 40 miles an hour wind today, which is crazy. So some people maybe even trying to get on, but they can't because power's out and whatnot. But in any case, let me start by just fielding any. Do you guys have any logistical questions or any questions in general about the course, about the material, about the homework packet, about the first exam?
For the homework, I guess, is there any sort of format that you maybe want? Because I just wrote the answers right, like 1.1, section one, let's say, and then question two, I wrote, whatever the question asked, the answer to it. Does that suffice?
That is that's perfect. That's what most students are doing. Yeah, one student asked me, this is a common question. Do I need to write down the question from the book in addition to my answer? And of course you can if you want, but you do not have to. So that's a lot of extra work. I've got the textbook. I know what the questions are. So you don't have to do that. And what's nice for this first homework packet, we're going to end up having 3 strewn throughout the term. This first one, a lot of people, maybe most people, they're just doing it in like a Word document or Google Docs. You can pretty much type all the answers. I think there was maybe one question where it asked you about like beauty products at a drugstore, like a CVS, and some people uploaded images, and that's really going above
I
and beyond.
think you cut out for me.
Yeah. So you know what'd you say? Yeah, you don't have to do that. But you'll see for the second and third homework packets, it's much more difficult to do it all digitally. Some people can because you'll end up having to kind of do some sort of like drawing, almost sketching, and we're going to be working through some logical, they're called proofs, which is meaningless to a lot of you now. But in any case, it's a little bit more, and these things called truth tables, where it's kind of a grid. So a lot of you'll do it, with pencil and pen, kind of hard copy the old school way. And then the easiest thing is, just take a picture of it with your phone or scan it. Or, and you can always, if you really need help, you can always take it to like a UPS store or a FedEx store or something like that, and just give them your hard copies and just say, help digitize this, scan this, and they'll either email it to you or give you a thumb drive or something. So, but that's for the future homework stuff. But pretty much for this one, you can just type all the answers. Okay, that's a good question. Any other questions? Again, about the homework packet, it's due tonight, the exam coming up on Thursday. By the way, this is, I'm recording this because, some people won't be able to make this, but I still want them to, to hear the information. So I will upload this later, just as a heads up. So any other questions?
Is the optional sections extra credit or it's really just optional?
It's really just optional. So in terms of extra credit, um, I'm not anti extra credit, but um, you know, I think of it this way. So, a lot of people in this class, they're very successful. A lot of people do well. They get A's, they get high B's. So It's when people are on the borderline of a grade at the end of the semester, and they're looking for that, or I have to make a decision. Am I going to bump them up or keep them where they're at? So one of the things I'll do is I'll look back and I'll say like, oh, okay, this person is between a B and an A, but look, they did all this optional stuff. That's great. So that would be some of your motivation there. As you guys will find out once you get your scores back for the homework, I'm very, very lenient on the homework. The homework is supposed to be low stakes. It's really just about effort. I mean, I do include that rubric, right? So it says if you attempt most of them and you have mostly right answers, you're pretty much going to get full credit. So historically, most students, they get 25 out of 25. And that way you go into the exam kind of with this, not so much as a buffer, but just kind of a boost. So you go into it feeling good. And, so that way, if you don't completely ace the exam, you've got that homework points to kind of skew it in a better direction. But that was a good question. Isabel, Ted, Richard, Angelina, do you guys have any questions about the homework, about the exam? We will go over a few exam problems. Just like I said, it was incentive for you guys to join us live today, which I appreciate. So that way you guys, we're gonna do some together. So you can write down these, and then once you take the exam, you can just fill in that answer.
Is that just a question not related to the course, but is there a reason why none of the philosophy classes are in person?
That is a very good question. Well, probably, and I'm not 100% about this, is because unfortunately we don't have a full-time anchor. We don't have a full-time instructor for philosophy at Gatlin. We used to, it was actually over 10 years ago. But the good news is they're hiring someone actually this month. And because there are, 3, 4, 5 of us adjuncts, and, adjuncts don't always live exactly in, like the Morgan Hill, Hollister, Gilroy area. They're teaching all over the place. And then, with the pandemic, they moved to online, and it just was easier for adjuncts. But the good news is starting next semester, so if you aren't graduating, there'll be in-person philosophy classes again. And we did offer them not too long ago. I mean, obviously COVID, but yeah, you're right. We haven't offered as many as we have liked to. I know it would be nice. I used to teach in person, one class here and there. And then it's also student demand. It's student demand. I would say that students would like, you guys could speak to this. Students would like, maybe not 100% online. Obviously, there's going to be a minority of students or some students that just want to do it online. It really works with their work schedule, their other like family responsibilities. But the average student, I think, does want in person. They want kind of a mix. So they might want 40% of their classes face to face and 60% online. So I think that's kind of the ratio that we'll shoot for. We're trying to meet student demand. So yeah, that's the long answer to. That's a good question. We used to, and I guess so. Next semester, or by the latest, the following spring. I know that would be nice. Yeah, I miss being in the classroom with you guys. So I hear you. Okay, will you just? Oh, go ahead. Yeah, anyone.
If one thing from the homework that I'm the most unclear on is the valid and invalid and cogent and uncogent.
Yeah,
From
yeah. Mm-hmm.
From what I can see from my answers, I would say that if it's invalid if it has a false premise,
So
or
Ted,
it might not be that simple.
Oh, I love that question. Yeah. So that concept, it's so central to this course, and it's one of the trickiest ones. So the fact that you asked that is good. That's going to help out all the students, because a lot of times people are thinking a question like that, but they're maybe afraid to ask it. So first off, so the thing that you said was close, but not quite right. So you said, if there's a false premise, I think you said this, correct me if I'm wrong. If there's a false premise, that tells you that the argument is not valid. You have to be very, very careful with that. So that's not necessarily true. And the reason why I could see why you're tempted to think that, because you are associating falseness or false premise with invalidity. And probably the reason for that is, in an everyday sense, when we say a point or an argument's invalid, we usually just mean that it's not very good. That's a bad point. That's an invalid point. What's a little bit annoying is, in this class, we're using the term in a different way. So there's the everyday kind of street sense of validity, which just means kind of bad point, wrong, incorrect, false. But for our class, it means something different. It means something more technical. It actually, if an argument is valid,
Oh,
it tells you. Go ahead.
I think I just got it. It's unsound if the premise is false, huh?
If you find a false premise, the argument is unsound. It has to be unsound, because
Okay.
yes, because one of the two conditions, one of the two criteria for a sound argument is having all true premises. So if you find at least one or more that's false, then you've got your answer. It's unsound. And then the second piece of the puzzle for soundness is that the argument's valid. So those two pieces together, that's where you'll get a sound argument.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. Here, let me just to give you a visual. Here, I'll share my screen, and we'll go to that chart. Okay. So these are the slides for the first chunk of the class. And so this kind of sums up everything that you were asking about, Ted, in one wonderful place. So this is just a picture that I took a screenshot of from a digital copy of the textbook. And so you can see here is sound and unsound. Because validity is a condition of soundness, I'll say that again, because validity is a condition or precondition for soundness. If you end up here, if you end up invalid, then necessarily you're going to have an unsound argument. So this is the set of all deductive arguments. Some of them are valid, but not all. And then an even smaller number of these valid arguments are sound. Not all of them, right? Because some of them are going to be unsound. And so the ones that end up here, not only are they going to be valid, but they're going to have all true premises. And if we go to the definition here, you'll see that. Valid, all true premises. Yeah. And then with cogency, so remember, what's nice about this chart is we're looking at our language, we're looking at sentences, and then we're looking at the ones that are statements. Not all sentences express statements. Remember, questions, commands, suggestions, greetings, none of those express statements. So if I say, what time is it? Or I say, take out the trash. Or I say, you step on my toe, and I say, ouch, why did you do that? I'm not stating anything, right? I'm exclaiming. I am asking a question. I am ordering something. I'm commanding something. But of the sentences that are declarative, those express statements. These are kind of statements of fact. I mean, that's not quite right, but just if you kind of think in that way, I think it'll get your head to the right place. Things that are true or false. And then when you have an argument, when you have a group of those statements and you're trying to argue for something, you've got some conclusion, but you can't just have a conclusion. If you're going to have an argument, you have to support it with something. And those are your reasons, your evidence, your premises. So an argument has those two parts. It has a conclusion. That's the statement that you're trying to support. And then the statements that you use to do the supporting, those are the premises. And so that's the components of every argument. And then we classified arguments into the ones that are trying to, with 100% certainty, that are trying to prove their conclusions, if you will. They're trying to show that if you have these starting points, if you grant these premises, you need at least one, this premise, or if you grant these set of premises, and you can have an unlimited number, then just by the matter of pure logic, this conclusion, it has to follow. So for instance, if this example I've talked about in the video lectures. So let's say you are a detective and you narrow down the location of the killer to two places, right? Let's say they're either in Morgan Hill or they're in Gilroy. And then you get some further clues which help you rule out Morgan Hill, let's say. If you grant that the premises are correct, and that's what you do for this, that's what you say, for the sake of argument. So if you just assume that the premises are right, and the premises are killers either in Morgan Hill or Gilroy, and then further you rule out Morgan Hill, then as a matter of logical necessity, this is kind of like the Sherlock Holmes sort of deductive method, you know that the killer has to be where? Any of you? Morgan Hill or Gilroy, you rule out Morgan Hill, the killer has to be where? You can use the chat too, if any of you guys kind of like just sitting back and kind of typing. You assume the killers and they're in Morgan, they got to be in either Morgan Hill or Gilroy. I've narrowed down their location to one of those two places, and then you rule out Morgan Hill, then the detective knows that the killer must be where?
In
Gilroy.
In Gilroy, exactly. So that's your conclusion in that argument. And is it 80%? Is it 50%? No, it's 100%. So that's an example of a good deductive argument. The argument is valid because if you grant those premises, the conclusion has to follow. So if we go to the definition of validity up here, it's impossible for that conclusion to be false. That's a roundabout way of saying that the conclusion has to be true. If it's impossible that it's false, think about that. If it can't be false, it has to be true. It's true that the killer is in Gilroy, given the premises, and that means the argument is valid. And then this is a hypothetical example, so we could only hypothetically say whether or not it's sound or not. But the next question is, are the premises actually true? So to determine that, it would be better if we had a real world example where we could look at the world and compare the premises against what's happening in the world and confirm or disconfirm whether or not they're actually true. So here's an example where a real world example where they don't work out. And this is one from class. So if I say, I, Ryan, live in Alaska, therefore I live in the United States, and of course that kind of implied premise that, Alaska is one of the states in the United States. So notice that the argument's valid, right? If it were true, if you grant those premises that I, Ryan, live in Alaska, and Alaska is the United States, then it would follow that I live in the United States. So the argument's valid, but it's not sound. Why? Because at least one of the premises is false. I don't live in Alaska. I don't know where I am, right? But I'm in California, but I'm certainly not in Alaska. So that argument, while it's valid, it's unsound. Okay, cool. Great. Other questions out there? Oh, and I see Teresa, you joined us. Wonderful. Anybody else have any questions about the homework, about the exam coming up, or just a general question? All right, Angelina, you asked, could you go over some from 2.1? I'd be very happy to. Okay. Right. So we spent a lot of time talking about the chapter 1 stuff about the basics of argument. Chapter 2 goes into emotive, cognitive meaning. We looked at euphemisms and dysphemisms, which weren't explicitly covered in the textbook, but still were a lot of fun. And also, of course, the definitions. So let's see, you said 2.1. All right. Okay, let me share my screen again. So in 2.1, right. So you have to do 3, 4, and 5. So 3. Oh, okay. I see, Angelina. Sorry. You said 2.1, and then after it, there's a V. And I thought that was some kind of emoticon, like how this, is I meant to do a smiley face, but I guess that's also one that's a winky face. So I thought that was kind of like a little symbol for, please or something. But you're talking about the subsection. How funny. That's really funny. Okay, so you want to do number 4. Okay, this one right here. I think this is it. Let me know if it is not. Okay, so right. Okay, so this is factual versus verbal dispute, or it's a combination of the two. Good. So this is a cool part of the class, because this happens to us in real life. Sometimes you are getting into it with someone, maybe even getting a little bit like a heated discussion, having a debate. And a lot of times you're talking past each other. And that means you're miscommunicating because you're not on the same page about the terms that you're using, or you have different starting points, or you have different definitions of things. And when that happens, you're having a verbal dispute. And sometimes people will say, oh, it's a matter of semantics. It's just semantics. And sometimes it's almost annoying to hear that. But what the person means is we're working with different definitions, or you're using that word in a funny way. That's what we're learning about partly in this class. Is many of our words are semantically ambiguous. And what that means is that one word or term or phrase or sentence, it can be read, it can be interpreted many different ways. And if we're not on the same page about the definition, we're going to miscommunicate. And that's what a verbal dispute is. Now, a factual dispute, that's an example where everyone's on the same page about the words we're using. We just disagree about the facts. So let's go through some of these examples to clear it up. So in this first one, so the starred ones, the answer's in the back, but just as an example, we'll go over it. I went over this in the little video lecture too, I think, but it's okay. It'll be worth doing it again. So Frank and Shirley are having this exchange. Frank says, hey, look at that huge tree that fell last night. It must have been a tremendous crash when it came down. And Shirley says, no, I'm afraid you're quite wrong. Sound is a perception, and perception depends on a perceiver. Therefore, since nobody was around here last night, there was no crash. Interesting. So this is kind of like the old Zen koan, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around, doesn't make a sound. That's kind of a little philosophical chestnut there. Are they working with the same definition of sound? I don't think so. Because Frank is talking about sound in a sense where even if no one is around, there still would be sound, presumably. And Shirley is talking about an experiential definition of sound. So they're talking past each other. So let me pull up. Let's see, what do I want to pull up here? Let's pull up chapter 2, 214. 2-1. Yeah. So that was a verbal dispute. There, yeah, Frank's just the way he's using sound is just kind of the normal everyday sense of sound. And then Shirley's getting all philosophical. She's meaning something else. So they're talking past each other. There's an ambiguity with sound. A sound means some subjective perception or maybe like a scientific disturbance of the air or some other medium. Okay, so that's number 1. All right. So number 2, Vicky and Barbara. Vicky says, yesterday I visited the exhibition of the work of Jean-Michel Basquiat. I'm probably butchering that, at the Central Gallery. What an interesting artist he is. Barbara says, don't be ridiculous. That's not art. It's just graffiti. So in this one, they're also talking past each other. They're working with different definitions of art. You know, Barbara is not going to count the sort of avant-garde expanded definition of art, and Vicky is, so if you think of art as a web of things, there's going to be a fringe to it. There's going to be a borderline. And is street art, is that a sort of art? Well, if you have a very narrow definition of art, maybe a very classical traditional definition of art, that might exclude street art. And that's the sense that Barbara has. Now, Vicky might be more liberal with her definition of art. So they're talking past each other because they're not working with the same definition of art. And I think this is also going to count. Let's see here, what number? We're on number 2 here. Oh, this only has what? This one might also be a both. Let's just double check here. So we are in 2-1. Oh, did I go too far? Bear with me. Oh, 2-1. 2-2-1 here. Yeah. So this one is both. At least the authors of our textbook thought so much. So first, they're working with different definitions of art. And then there is a question about, then there's the factual question of if we go with one of those definitions. So one's too broad, one's too narrow. So those are different definitions of art. They're not working with the same definition. So that's why it's a verbal dispute. But then another way to read this is perhaps they are working with the same definition of art. And Barbara is making a factual point, is that the street art isn't a part of the definition if it's the narrow one. So for 2, I'll give you full credit probably for almost all answers, but at least the authors, they're counting it as both, and I see their point. I would at least say it's verbal. And the reason they write vagueness is because when you are talking about a concept like art, where the border of art versus non-art is a little bit fuzzy, the edges, it doesn't seem to be an exact line where it's like on this side it's art and on this side it's not art. It's blurry, it's fuzzy. There's there's a continuum, and that's where we, it comes in degrees, and that's where vagueness comes into play. It kind of bleeds into each other. Okay, Angelina, did you want me to go over number 3 as well? Because I don't want to, we have only so much time, right? So I have this tendency to just kind of go on and on, as you probably have noticed. So I apologize for that. You just needed the second one. Okay. And that I could see why, because it took me, 10 minutes or so, 5 minutes to explain it. So yeah. Okay, good. All right. Other people, questions about the homework or the exam coming up? Again, the homework packet is due tonight. Some of you have already turned it in. By the way, those of you who have turned it in, you've done an excellent job. I've just looked over some of them, and a lot of people are going to be getting the full 25 points. Okay. While you're thinking of questions, and feel free just to unmute yourself and ask it, or put them into the chat. Why don't I go over a few of the exam problems? Give you a little bit of a bonus for showing up here. I really appreciate it. Look, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of you, which is awesome. Appreciate that, especially on such late notice. So I'm looking at the exam right now, and there's 32 questions, and in the instructions, which you can click into without starting the exam, in the instructions, you can see the question breakdown of the 32 by topic. And I'm going to go over a handful here. So there's going to be a question about this logic problem, or maybe the names are changed, but the basic, the names will change, but the logic of the question will not change. And because in the lecture video, I actually I think I say like, oh, I'll come back to the answer to this, but I didn't actually answer it. I did answer it in the video response to the first set of discussion boards from the first few weeks, but we'll do it again. So this is a question on the exam. So I'll show you. It's right here. Where did it go? This is the actual exam. You're looking at it. Sam is looking at Mary and no one else. Mary is looking at Joe and no one else. Sam is married. Joe is not. Is a married person looking at an unmarried person? So it's essentially the same question as this, but the names have been changed. So what do you guys think? Is the answer yes, no, or not enough information? We got 3 people. Say if this is Sam, he's looking at the middle person, Mary. Mary's looking at the third person, Joe. This Sam person is married. This person at the other end, Joe, is not married. So if Sam were looking at Joe, then we would know a married person's looking at an unmarried person. But Sam is not looking at Joe, just looking at Mary. Okay. But does that mean that no one married is looking at an unmarried person? What do you guys think? That's part of this class, is using this ability that all of us have to think logically and reason out what the answer deductively must be.
What's the format of this question, and what is it really asking us?
Oh,
or the format of the answer?
Yeah.
Will he be typing something out?
Yeah, Will, great question. So it is multiple choice. And so it's going to be yes, no, or not enough information to determine. And so the question is, what's it really asking? It's right there. Is a married person looking at an unmarried person, given this information?
Got it.
Yeah. So it's
Okay.
multiple choice. Yeah, it's going to be, well, and like you can see, the correct answer is yes. Yeah. And the reason is because the reason is since we know that the middle person, Mary, since we know that they're either married or not, we don't know which one it is, but they have to be one of the two. The answer has to be yes, because it doesn't matter which one of the two Mary is. Either way you go, the answer to this question is going to be yes. Why? Well, it's one of these two paths. Suppose it's the married path. If Mary is married, no pun intended, then the answer to this question is yes, because Mary would be looking at Joe, right? Mary's married, Joe is not. But we don't know for sure that she is. But it doesn't matter, because even if she's not married, the answer to this question still is yes, because if she's unmarried, then we satisfy this condition because of Sam. Sam is looking at Mary. And if she's unmarried, then the answer is yes. So either way you slice it, and it has to be one of the two ways, we're going to get a yes answer. Yeah. So good. I'm glad we went over that one. That one's kind of a tricky one. That's one of the harder questions on the exam too. Let's do one that's much more straightforward. So here's a matching question. What does each area of philosophy primarily study? So this we covered at the very beginning of the course when we looked at areas of philosophy. So this it's a matching question, but it's still multiple choice. It's matching the name of each of these areas with what each specifically studies. So ethics or moral philosophy, or more generally, it's called axiology. That's the study of right and wrong, whether or not something's ethical, whether something's moral. Logic, we know, is the study of correct reasoning. So that's an easy one. The two tricky ones are these two, because these terms, even before you took a class like this, you've used the word ethical or ethics and logic or logical. So you have a sense of these. These words are going to be more foreign to a lot of us. So metaphysics is the philosophical study of reality, about what exists and what is the nature of the things that exist. So you might ask about God. Philosophers love to discuss the existence of God. That's a metaphysical question. Is God real? That's a metaphysical question. And then if God is real, then what's God's nature? What's God like? Is God, in a lot of religions, God has these qualities, these attributes. God's supposed to be all loving and all knowing and all powerful. So you're doing the metaphysics of God. Free will, does that exist? It feels like we have free will, but is that an illusion? That's a metaphysical question. Whenever you're asking questions about what a person knows or can know, you're doing epistemology. So epistemology is the philosophical study of knowledge. And major questions that people in this field ask include, which of my beliefs count as knowledge? So what do I know? And this very quickly can become a slippery slope. Because when I ask you to come up with something that you know for sure, you might say, oh, well, I know that the earth isn't flat, something like that. Or I know that the sun is larger than the earth. That's something I know for sure. Are you 100%? Yeah, I am. But is there even a 1 out of a billion, 1 out of a trillion chance that you're mistaken about that? I mean, people thousands of years ago, when you ask them the question about the shape of the earth, they probably would have said it's flat. And then if you followed up, are you sure? They would say, yeah, I'm sure, 100%. So we have been wrong about things that we thought we were certain about. And if there's even the possibility of being incorrect, then can we still say we know it? So we just did a little epistemology there. Another big question is, what does the, so we talked about definitions, right? Provide a philosophical, a theoretical definition of knowledge, or define knowledge using a genus and difference definition. So we talked about those. And a lot of philosophers will say, well, knowledge it's a belief that you have that is true and that you have evidence for, that's justified. So that's an old theoretical philosophical definition of knowledge. And that has stood the test of time until actually the last century. I won't get into that. So we could spend, we could do a whole day, a whole class on that. But so that's the answer to this question. What does each area primarily study? And so you'll match these up, right? Metaphysics, you're going to remember reality, epistemology, knowledge, and so on. Okay. Let's do a couple more questions on, let's see, which of these looks good to go? Okay, about ambiguity and vagueness. Students often mix those up. So this is a question about comes in degrees or is all or nothing. Right. One of the ways you can tell ambiguity apart from vagueness, other than just having rock solid examples in your head, is by remembering that ambiguity is all or nothing, like a light switch being on or off. A term is ambiguous or it's not, whereas vagueness comes in degrees. So if I say my grandfather is old, that's vague. You can reduce the vagueness by getting more specific. My grandfather's in his 90s, so that's less vague. You could get more specific. My grandfather's 96. More specific. My grandfather's 96 and 3 months. 96, 3 months and a week and 4 days, and you can keep going. And it might be theoretically impossible to get rid of all the vagueness, but it's not like it's vague or not. It's to a certain extent vague. Ambiguity is all or nothing. And then, of course, the general definitions can be helpful. So if we go to the second set of slides, in general, vagueness. We could be talking about a term, a word, a phrase, or sentence. It's vague when its meaning, it's not, so it's about specificity. It's not specific enough. It's unclear. There's a continuous range of interpretation. It leaves us asking how blank. Oh, your grandfather's old. How old? It's hot outside. How hot? There's a range of interpretations. Ambiguity is when there's multiple meanings, when you can read or understand a term or a sentence in multiple ways, and it's not clear what meaning is intended. All right. Other questions out there? Any other maybe homework questions? Okay, I have an idea. I'm going to create a poll that you guys can all click on from your computer or tablet phone. Okay, so let's do, let's ask a question about your confidence here coming up. Okay. Let's see if this works. Oh, don't worry about the untitled question. Ignore that. Okay, I feel confident about this week's exam. Yes or no? So I think that's popping up for you. So feel free to chime in there. Yeah, the second question, I guess, just put either one. That was accidental. Okay, great. Okay, so this is good. So you can see at least 5 out of 6 of those of you answered said you are confident about this week's exam. All right, so I feel good about that. So the person who doesn't feel so confident, I mean, you don't have to reveal yourself, but feel free to ask a question either now or at some point. We'll probably do this for another 10 minutes or so, and then I'll let you guys go on with the rest of your day. Let's see, what else here? We'll do 1 or 2 more questions from the exam. Yeah,
One
go ahead.
thing is, if I remember correctly, I was having trouble distinguishing between theoretical and persuasive sometimes.
Yeah.
Because they can be a little similar.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, great. Let's go over that. So persuasive, those definitions, they often have emotive language. They are, they're trying to be persuasive. They're trying to get you to do something or think a certain way. So like a used car salesperson or a politician, they often are going to define words in a way to try to get you to side with them or try to get you to purchase the car in the case of the salesperson. Let's go to that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant theoretical or lexical.
Okay, theoretical and lexical. That actually makes more sense to me. Yeah, because persuasive, those usually have buzzwords or language that, it stirs up the emotive side of their psychology. Good. Okay. So lexical and theoretical. Oh, okay. So let's start with lexical. So you know how most dictionaries, for each entry, it won't just list one of the definitions for a word. It will list all of the definitions for a word, right? So that's all a lexical definition is. It's the set of definitions, the set of meanings that a word has. So let's go to let's just go to an online dictionary. Let's go to, I don't know, dictionary.com. Dictionary. And I don't know, let's just look up, what word should we look up? How about, I don't know. This just popped into my head. I have no idea why. Sweet. But you see, this is the entry for sweet in this online dictionary. And notice it doesn't just give you one definition because there's different interpretations or meanings or definitions of sweet, right? So the job of a dictionary is to give you all of them so that you can figure out, let's say you're reading something or you hear something, you can figure out, oh, the person, they're using probably this meaning of sweet. Like they're talking about, something similar to sweet food like sugar or honey. Or they might be talking about, I'm surprised that they don't have sweet. Oh, this is it. Yeah, in a sweet manner. So if somebody's a sweet person, there we go. Here's another meaning. Oh, look. And then they even have the slang, so like, oh yeah, take Dr. Ryan's class, logic. It's a sweet class or something, not to toot my own horn. So the lexical definition, it's the set, it's the group of all of these definitions together. So that's lexical. And then theoretical, there has to be, you want to look for, so first of all, it's not a set of definitions, it's one definition. And the basis of it, this is why it's called theoretical, is some theory. For example, it could be a scientific theory or a philosophical theory. So if you define force as it is equivalent, it's equal to mass times acceleration. So that's one of Newton's discoveries, one of the laws of physics. This definition of force is rooted in this scientific discovery. It's based on this scientific theory about the relationship of force, mass, and acceleration. So that makes it a theoretical definition. A lexical version of force would have things like, it might have the Newton's equation, but then another entry might be, using pressure to physically move something, right? Or maybe psychological coercion, right? I was forced, right? I was forced out of the party because of what that person said. I don't know. So that would be the lexical definition. It would be all the meanings of force. But if it's based on some scientific or philosophical theory, that makes it theoretical. So did that answer your question, Ted?
Yeah, thank you. I was just a little hazy on it.
Okay. Okay, good. Great. Other people? Yeah, with I actually switched textbooks not too long ago. And one of the reasons I did it is because even though the chapter that contains all the stuff on definitions and meaning, it is a lot, and you're like, whoa, I thought definitions were kind of simple, but it gets complicated fast because, there's theoretical, there's precising, there's operational, there's denotative, connotative. And who knew that it got so complicated? And I will admit, it's almost like this is almost too much or too complicated, especially for, an introductory course like this one. But there's something about it that I like. I think I have that sort of, that personality that kind of gravitates, I like to be organized as much as I can. And I kind of like the way it's all organized. And I like it's very comprehensive, but there's something I like about that. I think it's related to, if any of you have a little bit of that collector's bug in you, and it could be anything. It could be like when I was a kid, I had comic books and baseball cards, but even something more contemporary. So I was playing one of those open world video games where it's like almost infinite resources to collect. And it's like, I'm almost obsessed. Like I want to get each of every one. And it's like, oh my God, there's like 500 things you can collect. If any of you have that kind of, that bug where there's something, you just want to get one of every one. It's like a completionist thing. And so that's kind of why I like this textbook, because it's very much completionist when it comes to all these definitions. But I would say, whenever you feel stuck, the best thing to do, the thing that I still do, is have a go-to rock solid example of whatever it is you're confused about. So now when you think about lexical definitions, you could think, oh yeah, Ryan said it's that list of all the meanings of sweet. Sweet like sugary, sweet like a sweet person, like a character trait, sweet like the slang of cool or good. And then, oh yeah, theoretical. It's like a scientific definition of force that you might find in a physics book. Okay, yeah, I remember that example. Or yeah, valid argument. Oh yeah, like that detective argument where the killer is in location A or location B and we rule out one of them. So that's right, that's right, they must be in that other the location that's left. So I think that's the best thing you can do. And also remember, this homework, this exam, It's all open book, open note. I mean, the only limit, well, maybe not the only one, but one of the major limitations of the few is, you can't get help from another classmate or your roommate, or, let's say you have a friend who's a philosophy professor. Now, obviously you can't do that, but, you can use all the resources from class. You can use the recordings, you can use the discussion boards, you can use the textbook. So, and you have a lot of time. So it's not like you have to, it's not like you don't have these resources. It's not like you have to do this long memorization thing or something.
I have
All right.
more
Yeah,
questions.
Isabel, go ahead. Mhm.
I was wondering if you could probably go over one of the questions in the exercise 2.5 really quick, just to see how because the directions kind of are a little confusing.
I would be happy to. Absolutely. Okay, 2.5. Great. And is there one of the sub sections that which one? 2.5, 1, 2.5. Oh, I guess is there only just one? Looks like it. Nope, there's a 2, but I didn't assign that. Okay. So any specific one of these? I think all the ones that are highlighted are the ones that I assigned.
Probably just the first one, if anything.
Yeah, okay. We can do the first one and then we can do a few more as well. All right. So here's what we need to do. So again, this is 2.5. We need to criticize the following definitions in light of the 8 rules for lexical definitions. So one thing I'm noticing right as I'm reading this is that this is optional, but I'm happy to go over it. So if you don't do this section, totally cool with me. But let's go over some of these. So the rules for the lexical definitions. There's a lot of them. I mean, there's 8, right? And let me go over at least a couple of these that I think once I cover them, it'll make sense. I mean, the grammar one, that's like almost kind of like a no-brainer. So if it's ungrammatical, that's not going to be a good definition. It's almost funny that is one of the rules. I think this is a good one to keep in mind. Neither too broad, not too narrow. So think about when I was talking about art. So if you think of a definition like a spotlight, you want that spotlight to be on all the art, but you also want it to be on only the art. So you want to get it all, but you don't want to get things that are not art, right? So you want the spotlight on like sculptures and drawings and paintings, but you don't want the spotlight on tables, rocks, chairs, and trees, because those things aren't art, right? So if your spotlight is on things that aren't art, like if it's on houses and glasses and rocks, then your definition's too broad. But if your spotlight is missing some of the art, like if it's not shining on like Rembrandt stuff, or it's not shining on like the maybe the Gavlin theatrical performance from last semester, then you're missing some of the art. So that would mean that your definition's too narrow. So if you guys remember the story of Goldilocks, it kind of fits into what we're talking about here, because you remember Goldilocks, she wants everything to be just right. So whether it's the porridge or it's the bed or it's the chair, you don't want it to be too hot or too cold. You want it to be just right. You don't want it to be the bed or the chair to be too hard or too soft. You want it to be just right. It's the same thing with definitions. We don't want it to be too broad, too narrow. We want the spotlight to be too broad, too narrow. We want it to be kind of as best as we can get it. That might not be possible because some concepts and maybe even perhaps some objects in the world are just inherently vague, which means that there's not a clear edge. There's some fuzziness. For example, daylight. So daylight comes from the sun. Like light is a real thing objectively in the universe. And of course, our eyes perceive light, which is really cool, just when you think about that. But daylight, when is it daytime? When is it nighttime? Is there a specific time? You might say, well, at the exact moment when the sun sets. Well, that's not quite right, because even after the sunset, there's still a bit of daylight after. Now, once it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, here, then it's not day. There's no more daylight. So we have prime examples of daylight and say not daylight or nighttime, but there's still kind of some fudgy edges. So maybe you can't always get that perfect line, but that's just the way the world is sometimes. Now, for mathematical things or geometrical things, then you can have like that spotlight can be perfect. You could shine a spotlight on all the squares and only the squares and have this great definition where you get the essence of, say, a square, right? So you would have to have criteria like it's got to have 4 sides, 4 equal sides. It's got to have 4 right angles. It's got to be a closed 2-dimensional shape, something like that. So then it would be just right. Oh yeah. But if you add blue, notice that makes the definition too narrow, right? Because you are excluding all the squares out there that are different colors, like a red square or a yellow square. So that's neither too broad or too narrow. Circularity. Yeah, if you're using the word itself or some variation of the word in the definition, it's circular. Because if you say science means activity engaged by scientists, you've really just kicked the problem down the road just a little bit, because someone might say, okay, I guess this is true, but what do you mean by scientists? And then if you just said, oh, a scientist is someone who does science, and science is activity engaged by scientists, then in round and round you go. So it's not that these definitions are false. It's just that they're not informative enough. So that's what it means. You want to avoid circularity. Yeah. And sometimes it's easy to learn about something by learning what it isn't. So that can be a good first step, but you don't want your final analysis or definition to be negative. And by negative, I mean that it has all these negations and not. So, okay, yes, Catholics are Christians that are not Protestants, but you've kind of, we might, that's true, but have we gotten to the essence of what Catholic means? So it's not that this is wrong, it's just that it's perhaps incomplete. Figurative, art means frozen music. It's like, okay, there's something to that, but it's like, well, what exactly does this mean? This is kind of vague, and you don't want to be so figurative. You want to be literal when you're providing definitions. Okay, so with that in mind, we can go through some of these. A sculpture is a 3-dimensional image made of marble. Well, that's too narrow, isn't it? Because you could have a sculpture that's made out of clay. I'm assuming clay is not exactly marble. Or you could have a sculpture that's made out of almost anything, wood, gold. So that's too narrow. Illusory means elusive. That's circular, isn't it? Because you're using a form of the word. Birdie means sinking the ball. Birdie means sinking the ball in 1 stroke under par. Okay, so that sounds right to me. So this is a golfing term. I think here they want the context. So if you don't know that they're talking about golf, you might be like, huh? So that's the last bit here. That's number 8. So I think it means birdie, you want to add in parentheses in golf. Okay. A cynic is a person who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. That's like beautifully written, but that's a bit too vague and obscure and figurative. So let's see if the authors agree with my assessment here. So this is 2.5 here. We said it's too narrow, circular, context, yeah, figurative. Yeah, okay, good. Spot on. Semantics is when somebody studies words. That's a bit broad, isn't it? Because a poet might also study words. So it's at least a bit broad. Oh, and they're talking about improper grammar. I could see that when somebody studies words. Right. Study word. I mean, is when. I guess it's is when. That part is weird. Is when. It could be written better. Okay. iPhone, we'll do one or two more. iPhone means a handheld electronic device having an LCD screen and a single toggle button at the bottom of the face. Well, iPhone these days don't have the toggle buttons. So this is too specific. And, oh, so this is number, what am I looking for here? Oftentimes when it's too specific, you miss out on kind of what the thing essentially is. You know, and so at its core, what is an iPhone, right? It's a smartphone. It is a portable device that you can use. I remember when the iPhone came out, it kind of had these three core functions. And one was that this was the thing, if you ever watched that on YouTube, kind of the Steve Jobs, I forget what they're called, Apple event launch day or whatever for the iPhone. He kept saying, today we're introducing 3 revolutionary products. One of them is a new phone. One of them is a camera. And one of them is a revolutionary internet communication device. And he's like, a phone, a camera, a communication device. Are you getting it? It's the same thing. You know, so it was, you know, he was a good job making those speech. So that's at its essence what an iPhone is. And this doesn't get that. It just says it's a handheld electronic device, but it says nothing about how it connects to the internet, camera, and it says nothing about it being a phone. So that's why it's missing the essential meaning. Okay, cool. Okay. All right. It's after 3, so I don't want to keep you guys too long. Any final questions about anything or the exam or the homework coming up?
No, but thanks for your help.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was
Appreciate it.
Will. Yeah. I know I ramble on sometimes, but I hope this I hope this was worth it. And you know, hey, this is kind of cool. We haven't really met each other, so we get a little bit of synchronous interaction, you know, in this asynchronous course. So yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, no, it was super helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. Oh, it makes me happy. Okay, great. Cool. Well, anybody else?
If there's no other question about the course, I do have a question. I saw that you went to UCSB and I'm waiting admissions to UCSB in the fall. So I'm just curious, how was your time there?
Oh yeah, Isaiah. Yeah. Oh well, I'm so excited for you. Yeah. So I mean, I'm biased, but I absolutely loved it. Yeah. So I went there from 2000 to 2004, and I've been back. A lot has changed, but a lot is kind of the same. I actually was talking to someone who just graduated there like a year ago, and a lot of their experiences were kind of the same that mine were. And great school academically, beautiful location, obviously. You know, it's funny. My freshman year there, it was kind of like this. Like we had a really rainy year, so hopefully you'll get a beautiful, drier season when you go down there. Professors are great. Philosophy program's really strong. I also double majored in psychology. That's also a great major. They're strong in engineering, in many majors. You know, hey, it's a UC. It's one of the top UCs. Let's see what I mean. Yeah, it's a fun, right? It's a fun. You know, people say it's a party school or whatever, but it's that's there if you want it, and if that's not your thing, then that's fine. Yeah, so I couldn't recommend it more highly. So I think I'm sure you'll get in, and yeah, it'll be great if you go.
Thank you.
Yeah. Angelina, you said thank you. Well, thanks right back to you. Looks like you had to go. Teresa, you said thank you, Professor. Just wanted to tell you your lectures are very interesting and not boring. Hey, I appreciate. Hey, I know. Hey, I remember being a student, and there's a lot of stuff that you just kind of have to get through, and so I'm just trying to make it. I know that you guys have a lot that you're doing, so I'm just trying to make this, as good as it can be, interesting and not, rigorous enough, but not terribly daunting and difficult. Oh yeah, thank you, Richard. Okay, unless there's anything else, I'll sign off. You guys have a great, wonderful rest of your day, and good luck on the homework and exam. And just email me or get a hold of me if you have anything else that comes up. All right. Goodbye, everyone.